a disunited kingdom, reclaiming an Englishness that's been hijacked by the right. We're going to read into this article written by MP Caroline Lucas from Byline Times, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an analysis or a written piece by MP Caroline Lucas here on Byline Times with the headline that a disunited kingdom, reclaiming an Englishness hijacked by the right. At the heart of our political crisis is how England in particular has struggled to find its way in the modern world. I'm really looking forward to reading this piece, guys, because obviously Caroline Lucas, for those of you who don't know, is a highly respected MP. She is currently the only, as the time of this recording, is the only Green MP in the party, and very much a voice for many, and really does speak from the heart. One of the very few MPs, politicians out there, you can say that you hand your heart is one of the good ones, that really does fight for their constituencies and fights for what they think is the most justifiable benefits of not just England, but I think the UK as a whole and on the world stage. And it's a shame that we're going to be losing her as an MP, because she will not be standing after the next general election as the MP for Brighton. And it's a real shame, because she really is someone that speaks from the heart. But I'm really fascinated to hear what she is going to say about England in particular, because England is as you guys know, in comparison to the other four nations, is really on the decline. And while, don't get me wrong, the other devolved nations that are having their battles as well, England is really in a right state. And it feels like more and more we are losing our way. And there is this poison coming from the right-wing media that are portraying that everything that is going wrong in our society or in our culture or in our lives is always someone else's fault. That it is always someone of a different colour of skin, or is it someone of a different nationality, or is it because that person walked past you speaks a different language? And people have this perception that is being created by the mainstream media, is that the warp into their minds of that is England is going to dissolve, and that white people are going to disappear, that they to create this cultural fear, when the reality is that England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, we are a multicultural Great Britain of four different nations. We are multicultural. We are welcoming. We are diverse. We have different languages, different people from all sorts of different backgrounds. That is what we have. That is what we have been. That is what we have become. That is our history. That is what we are. So when people talk about taking back control or sovereignty, where is this going in your mind when you think about that? Where are we heading in this kind of direction, this kind of thoughts, when people say taking back control and taking back, sovereignty, British and in English, when we have people that have lived their whole lives or have never set foot on another country and have been born and raised into our cultures and our values, while people bring their own cultures and values into that. And yet people have this perception that it is bad to bring in different cultures and different aspects into our lives, when it should be a welcoming thing to learn, because that kind of thing is what education teaches us as well. Because I learned a lot about, during my time, I've learned a lot about meeting different people from different cultures, different backgrounds, the accents that they have, from the history of where they've come, and it is fascinating. And you learn a lot about people from these different backgrounds, and it's so educational in your mind. It's not just opposed to what you read online, but what you see from these actual people. And this right, and the so-called right. The question is obviously, this is about Englishness. Obviously, what is Englishness? What is it to you? For those of you who live in England with me here, what does it mean to you to be English? because I see myself as born and raised in England. I consider myself English. I consider myself British. I consider myself European. I consider myself a human, a citizen of the world like everybody else. But what does it mean? Is, I guess, the question we need to ask ourselves, because I'm not quite sure how we define that. It's a fascinating thought, to say the least. But let's read what Caroline Lucas has said here, because I'm very fascinated to how she puts this into words. And if you've seen some of her speeches, by the way, if you haven't seen some of her speeches in the Houses of Parliament, I recommend checking out Daily Blase, guys, and I'll put a link to his channel in the description, where he's covered some fantastic speeches, wonderful speeches by Caroline Lucas over the years in some of his videos. Definitely worth a check. So while the death of extraordinary Tom Nairn this year is widely acknowledged in Scotland, with Nicola Sturgeon, Salmond and Gordon Brown all sharing fulsome eulogies about his significant influence in their own making, strangely bearing residence among England's political leaders. That's a particular shame, since as much of his analysis was about my homeland, and it is seemingly permanent state of political crisis. Perhaps it reflects the fact that few of England's political elites are willing to accept they are just English, let alone to contempt the logic of Nairn's argument that the breakup of Britain, the mutual liberation of the crumbling political construct in which he famously called Ukania, might just be good for all of us. What's the nature of the democratic crisis we face? Seen in one way, the problem is our political institutions. And before I go any further here, I think she's trying to paint here from about Tom Nairn here is that it is potentially a good thing that the United Kingdom should break up. Now I can see already the Scots saying, yes, we want to be independent, we want to break from the UK. Yes, I mean this when I say this, guys. You know, I as an Englishman, you know, I want everyone, whoever you are, whatever your nationalities, to have the best opportunities in life for you and your friends, your families, for all your brothers and sisters, for the next generations. You know, I mean that. I've always said that, hands on heart. Personally, I would have wished that the United Kingdom could stay together. But that can't happen. And the reason why it can't happen is because the political system that we have in place, the distrust that has been made over the past 13 years in particular, first 13 years in particular, there was absolutely no question that the love, the union and the love and the passion that there was at really, really high during the 2012 London Olympics. There was absolutely no question about that. There was absolutely no question about that. It was very, very high at that time. It really, really was. But things have changed and times have changed. And in the 2014 Scottish independent referendum, it really was a knife edge on whether they wanted to go independent or not. Unfortunately, that vote, in my opinion, was null and void. And the reason why it was null and void was because promises were made that were not kept in that vote, which is why they are entitled to a second Scottish referendum. They should be entitled to it based on the lies that they were made, just like we were lied to in the EU referendum on leaving the European Union. Now, obviously, how things are going to happen and what's going to transpire when that day will come when Scotland do leave, because it will come for them. I don't know what's going to happen to England, Wales and Northern Ireland. But like everything in life, times change, people change. That's just the way of life. Some people don't like change, but sometimes it's necessary, even if we don't want it. What's the nature of democratic crisis we face? Seen in one way, the problem is our political institutions. The architect undemocratic first past the post voting system, an over-centralised governance system, the unelected House of Lords, the populist abuse of sovereignty, the vast networks of parangems, the stuffy and outdated conventions and public school atmosphere, the whole damn lot of it. You cannot argue this paragraph from Caroline Lucas. It sucks. It sucks to the core. All of it. You can't argue that. An unelected House of Lords, we pay out taxpayer money. We pay them. And we don't have no say in them at all. None. That's not democratic in any way, shape or form. A first past the post voting system where your vote at times can be completely and totally meaningless, which discourages people from voting. How is that democratic? But seen in another way is about nationalism and identity, and specifically just about how in England in particular has struggled to find its way in the modern world. How we cling to our delusions and imperial grandeur, pretend that we're so much more than just English, and how the devastating consequences of that are all around us. It was English exceptionalism that drove Brexit, for example, in one way the EU referendum campaign that seems a lifetime ago. We've gone through so much since then, and if anything, the alienation and polarisation are much greater today than they were back in 2016. But the truth was clear then, even then, that Brexit was a result of division, and it will make those divisions worse, and it has deepened the democratic crisis within the United Kingdom. We've spoken on numerous occasions about how families have been torn and broken up, relationships have ended, and how split the country has been since Brexit, and still those divides still remain today. The fact that England and Wales voted to leave and Scotland and Northern Ireland to stay has put incredible strain on the myth that the United Kingdom is an equal partnership of four nations. It's not an equal relationship between the four nations. It never has been. Never has been. The government in London decides what form Brexit would take without any reference at all to the elected governors of Edinburgh, Belfast, or indeed in Cardiff. Unsurprisingly, as a result, support for the ratification of Ireland has grown. The pressure of a second independent referendum in Scotland remains strong, and in Wales a new sense of national identity is on the rise. The future of the United Kingdom itself is now in doubt. Yet we left the EU primarily because of what happened in England. Outside of the capital, every single English region voted for Brexit. It is no disrespect to Wales, I hope, which voted by the majority of only 80,000 to leave, to say if it was an English vote that drove Brexit. In the months following the referendum, I travelled to many Leave voting areas in England so that I could hear from people first, face to face, why they had supported Brexit. Sometimes this was difficult. One reason that those who benefited economically from the EU membership and from the UK becoming a more open and diverse society did not do anything like enough to share these gains fairly, and often sneered at those with more traditional view of England. But these conversations were also refreshing and reassuring because there was so much more than we could agree on that held us apart. Many people were angry, of course they were, but if you took the time to go and pay them the courtesy of listening, then common ground could emerge. This is a key thing, guys. If you ever want to understand people, this is for someone who went out of their way to go out of their way to listen to these people. That's what a real leader does. This is someone you would want as a prime minister, who's not afraid to step into the fire and speak to these people that she vehemently disagrees with. How many people are willing to do that? But these conversations were also refreshing and reassuring because there was so much more that we agreed on that held us apart. Many people were angry, of course they were, but if you took the time to go and paid them the courtesy of listening, then common ground could emerge. Only thing that continuously arose through this listening exercise, which my small team filmed and shared the best that we could, which came to be known as the Dear Leavers, was about people's sense of pride in the places of where they lived, but simultaneously their feeling of powerlessness. I was told countless times that London and the powers that were held there were so far away that they might as well have been on another planet. They felt unheard and ignored. This was about more than an economic complaint. However cohesive this country's grotesque inequalities of wealth and opportunity undoubtedly are, it was also about culture and identity. Many resent how some expressions of Englishness were allowed, while others were not. It was acceptable to love the English countryside, English humour, English music and English literature, but to see this aspect of Englishness, as welcoming, humane, full of energy and creativity. But the moment Englishness took a political form, it apparently turned into the opposite. Even the mild forms of patriotism were frowned on. The English flag was acceptable fluttering from a church tower in Portuguese villages, but was instantly interpreted as a form of racism if hanging from someone's window or in the state. That's true. When you see that English flag now, people have that picture perception is painted on people now. Like, I wear an England football shirt, guys. I don't support football anymore, but I don't watch football anymore. Sorry, is what I'm supposed to say. That's soccer for America. But even I don't wear it anymore because I don't feel comfortable wearing it. Maybe I feel a bit of a, I'm just speaking for myself here, but maybe I feel a bit of shame about it. Maybe that's just me. Yeah, Englishness should not be something to be scared of or suppressed within the notion of Britain as if this will contain it safely. On the contrary, as Brexit shows, it doesn't. See, I have an Irish shirt, guys, believe it or not, an Irish polo shirt, and I'm more comfortable wearing that. The only reason I can't wear it on stream is because it's green. We need to recognise that many people who see themselves primarily as English feel that they are without a voice, including a political voice. There are no institutions that represent England's equivalent to those three other countries of the UK. Nothing to give political expression to our complex, rich and sometimes rigorous reality, or where differences can be expressed and perhaps resolved. The so-called English problem is not one of culture and identity, but also profoundly one of democracy. And we need to ask ourselves, what kind of England do we want now and in the future, either within the United Kingdom or as an independent state, a reborn Kingdom of England? Will it be smaller, diminished versions of what we are now? Will imperial delusions and exceptionalism continue to shape the sense of itself? Will it be inwards looking, resentful of lost glories, held back to social and economic injustices, and run from the benefit of a narrow elite? Or could it become a genuine democracy, confident, onward looking, inclusive and recognising our future necessarily involving being a part of Europe? These questions have taken on an ever greater urgency as xenophobic nationalism continues to rise across Europe, from the success of the Swedish Democrats and True Finns to the growth of the far right in France, Italy and Hungary. At the same time, propelled by the outcome of the Brexit referendum and the 2019 general election in the UK, the populist right wing strengthens its grip on an increasing extreme, out-of-touch Conservative Party. If a progressive alternative to this national populist agenda is to be successful, it needs to do more to offer bolder, more ambitious politics vital to those that are in need to unify rather than divide, and to offer hope rather than despair. And of the most effective ways of doing this is by telling the more competitive stories of who we are and who we can be. And so, to answer my question of how do we get out of this current democratic crisis, it's not about how constituents answer. It's not just about how a proportional voting system, an elected House of Lords, an end to political paranoia is drafted of a written constitution. It is also about telling more compelling stories about who we English are so that we might finally be more comfortable with our own skin, less intent on subduing our neighbours, whether that be within the UK or across the empire. I wish you did not use that word. I hate that history. But it's one we can't get away from either. Because I would wager that when we English do finally settle with our own identity, we'll discover a much more progressive than we've ever led to believe. Right now, Englishness is being hijacked by the right. The dominant version of our national story solely serves their interests. The only people who dare speak of Englishness are cheerleaders from its isolation and imperial nostalgia. There are other stories equally compelling about who we are, about the English people's rational inclusivity, their ancient commitment to the natural world, their long struggle to win rights for all. Stories that put the Chartists and the diggers in their rightful place alongside Nelson and Churchill. That draw aspirations from the agreement of the people, from Tom Paine, from the Shelley, Milton and Blake. That draws on medieval writers and romantic poets who emphasise the sanctity of the environment. That recognises and celebrates England's ancient multicultural heritage. My forthcoming book, Another England, sets out to tell those stories because I believe that rediscovering those stories of an England at ease with itself and with our past forward, looking open, more equal, diverse and multi-ethnic, and identifying the policies that can help to realise them has become a political project every bit as important as investing in the infrastructure or levelling up. A country without a coherent story about who or what it is can never thrive or prosper. It can extract itself from its own democratic crisis and certainly can't rise to the existential threats of our time, the climate and national emergency. As the writer Ben Oskey puts it, nations and people are largely the stories they feed themselves. If they tell themselves stories that are lies, they will suffer the future consequences of those lies. If they tell themselves stories that face their own truths, they will free their histories of future flowerings. Finding and telling stories that speak to the truth of England's past and present and inspire us to imagine and pursue new and better futures might turn out to be one of the most transformative acts that we can undertake and one of the greatest contributions to a healthier democracy across all these islands. And as it says at the end there, guys, Caroline Lucas is the Green MP for Brighton Pavilion. Her book, Another England, A New Story of Who We Are and What We Can Be, will be published in the new year. And this is an edited version of her speak at the Breakup of Britain, confronting the UK's Democratic Crisis Conference in Edinburgh on the 18th of November 2023. Could be a worthwhile, interesting book when it does come out, guys. Another England, a new story of who we are and what we can be. Very fascinating words from Caroline Lucas there, guys. Interesting, lots to digest there, guys, I would say. What are my final thoughts? I think have hope in dark days, guys, because there are always good times and there are always bad times. And I would say that even though just because things look bleak now and there are questions about Labour does not mean that there aren't people who care, that do want things to be better in all nations, not just here in England. But it is also important that England has its own voice as well as Wales has its own Scotland and Northern Ireland. England, I believe, will find the right path. I do believe in that. And perhaps it will find its own identity and hopefully it will be the right one too. What that will look like in the future, only time will tell. So what do you guys make of Caroline Lucas's thoughts? What do you think of Englishness, England itself? Let me know what you guys honestly think, what you think of Caroline Lucas's written piece there in the comment section down below. Hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I go live. And as always, guys, because it's from Byline Times, if you want to financially support them, you can do so, and I'll put a link for them in the description. Or if you want to financially support me, you can do so by joining my YouTube membership for just 99p, or joining me on Patreon too. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.